Hi everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Artesprix, and today we are going to be creating a project with the Artesprix canvas zip cases. So let's quickly go over the supplies that I'm going to use for this project. I am going to be using the Artesprix sublimation markers. I have a very specific stamp set that I am going to be using along with that. So I've already chosen the colors. I have placed my markers to be face point tip down for 15 to 20 minutes. You want to get that ink flowing if you have not used your markers recently, especially if you haven't used your markers recently. But I'm going to be using the brown from the fine tip markers, and then the pastel set of the sublimation markers, Artesprix. And then I'm going to use a black sublimation stamp ink. I do have the Artesprix multi-purpose cleaner on hand, and I'm also going to be using this Artesprix hand lettered basics stamp set in the creation. Then the most important part of the entire process, we are going to be using the Artesprix protective paper. It is siliconized paper that is going to protect your heat surface, and you want to make sure to protect that heat surface very well so you don't get any sublimation ink that escapes from your project and would get onto either your press bottom or your press platen. Then I'm going to be using just some basic supplies. So I have the Artesprix stamp block, but I also have another acrylic because my other stamp set is going to be larger. So I have stamp acrylic sets here, blocks, and then regular ordinary copy paper along with a pencil. I'm going to use some sticky notes. I'll show you how to do that. And then you also would want the Artesprix heat tape. This is specialized tape to withstand the high heat and pressure that is used when you are working with sublimation. Sublimation is very, very cool, very neat, but it is an ink transfer. That's why your protective paper is so important. So it is a very unique process of science where once heated, the sublimation ink will transfer to your polyester blank, which is the Artesprix sublimation blanks. It will transfer to the sublimation blank, making it permanent onto your object. Now, you don't need any specialized paper for this. Plain ordinary copy paper works. If you're working with the Artesprix sublimation paints or water, when you're mixing and making a watercolor look, then you may want to use the mixed media paper just to give it a little bit more tooth on that. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get started with one of the Artesprix blanks. So I'll set up my workspace for that. So here I have the Artesprix blank. The one thing I do want to mention about working with something like the zippered case, you do want to be mindful of the zipper. You do not, it's metal here and plastic zippers, of course. You do not want to melt that in your heat press, or the metal can get extremely hot, so be very careful. There are also seams on the edges of your object. So I am going to use also just a hand towel that I have flattened out as flat as possible to help bump that up and account for those seams inside of this zipper. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. The first thing I want to do though is I'm going to take a sheet of the copy paper, and I just have a silicone mat underneath just to protect my surface. But what I want to get just a guideline, a template for my design. Now you want to use pencil when you are tracing around your objects, or if you are sketching your design, because pencil does not transfer to your blank. Pen or marker could transfer to your blank. But now we have this design and we have an idea of the size. So here I stopped. This is about the edge of where my zipper area is. So I kind of know that I don't want to go higher than that. When you are working with seams like this, you can place your design up there, but it's going to be a little bit more finicky in how it might get the pressure and the color that might show up. The same thing on the edges here. So we're going to bump this up inside with a towel to kind of account for that, but you just want to keep that in mind when you're creating your design. So I'm going to set that aside to a safe place. Now I have this vision in my head. We're going to hope that it comes out onto the paper in the correct way. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my text. Now these are Artesprix stamp hand lettered basic stamps. when you are working with text and sublimation, because this is a transfer, when you transfer this onto your object, it's going to be, you would have to mirror your text on your sheet of paper. So when it transfers to your object, it's going to read correctly. The Artesprix Sublimation Stamp Set, the hand lettered basics, is already mirrored for you so that when you stamp onto your surface, it's going to read properly. If you do not have a stamp set that with the text that is already mirrored, you would have to use other methods, and I will link another video in the description below for a video I use the Artesprix mirror stamp and how I use that to work with other stamps. So you just want to keep in mind that whatever is on your sheet of paper that you are designing on is going to look opposite on your actual blank. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out of the package. And then I want to use two things. So I'm going to tie or put on here, love to travel. And I'm going to show you a little trick. The first one I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with love. And I'm just setting that down kind of just on my page, but then I can place my stamping block on top of that. And it does have lines if you want to line that up either way. In this case, I don't necessarily need to. And you can decide where you want this to be placed. I'm going to stay away from the edges of my, the seams on my zipper bag. So I'm going to give myself kind of an allowance there, especially when you're first starting out for your success. That's what I would encourage. The more you play with it, the more you'll get some techniques. I am going to grab an extra sheet, or I can use the top here. Let's just use the top. So when I'm working with stamps, especially for the first time, I am just going to reposition this and then press it down just so it's all an even surface. And then I'm going to it's called what we call seasoning a stamp. If you've ever been around card making, I'm going to just lightly tap. You don't want to squish it. My ink pad is very, very well inked. Outside of my template area where I can cut this off, I'm going to just stamp a practice stamp. That's kind of seasoning. So it's, especially if your stamps are brand new and some of them have never been used before, that kind of gets the ink to stick more the next time around, just because it is getting rid of the manufacturing dust or oils or anything like that on the actual stamp. That's just something I have learned from card making and stamping and card making for many years. Now I'm going to position this where I would like it, and I'm just going to press down. If you do mess up for some reason, you can always just grab another sheet of copy paper. Now I'm going to take just the Artesprix cleaner. I'm done with this one. I can just spritz it, and then I'm going to grab a paper towel. You can also use a stamp cleaner, a scrubby thing. I'm going to spray this off camera just so I don't get it on my surface, and then just clean that off. So there's my first text. I'm going to place this back on my sheet. The next one I'm going to grab is travel. Now, on this stamp sheet, there is friend, hello, peace, love, happy, wolf, and travel. I'm going to work with this, and I'm going to show you a little trick. I want to stamp love to travel, but I don't have the word to, so I am going to make that up. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to do travel. Now, this is a new stamp. I've never used it. I'm also going to season it on my skin. You can choose to do this or not. You can also just stamp it off a couple times on a sheet of paper. That just also helps to season it. So I'm going to kind of judge this. So I'm going to use the T from this, and after I stamp travel, I'm going to use that T. So I'm going to use it right now as my kind of gauge. That's the bottom of where I want that T to start next. So I now know kind of my spacing. I'm going to first season this by stamping it off. That turned out really good. sometimes your stamp off. Although I do see a little bit, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but right here, there could be something that's on my stamp. Nope, it looks like that's part of the stamp. So it's just another way to check that. It's part of my stamp. I'm going to put some more ink on that. Just get it in that area. So I want to keep that in mind. I'm going to kind of try to line it up. Give myself a little bit of space. And now I have travel. So I have love. Now I also need to add in the 2. I'm going to take the T from travel, and I can take the O from love, or I could take an O from wolf. Now, I personally don't like to cut my stamps apart, but you can. I'm going to just use a simple trick here, and I only need a little bit here. If it doesn't stick to your stamp, what I can do is I am going to stick this down here. Now, before I do any ink, I'm going to wipe this off just so I don't get it. And then I'm going to kind of test this. Where do I want that T? So this is a process called masking. And what it's going to do is I'm going to be able to place my stamp down, and it's not going to stamp those letters that I don't want. So here, I'm going to place it on here. I want to make sure I get that R covered. And then I can position this underneath. And I kind of got ink there. I'll show a trick for that one too. Okay. I think that's good. We're going to go with that. So let's just use this here. I already have ink there, but I know how to solve that one. I only need my T. I'm going to try as much as I can just to get the T, the ink, but I know it's going to get on the R. Ooh, yep. The first time it didn't, second time it did. That's okay. That's what my mask is for. Now that I have that, the biggest thing is you want to make sure your T has coverage. So I'm going to then stamp it down where I want it. And you can see now it's stamped on top of the mask. I can remove that and it's gone. Okay, so it's not there. I am going to use that mask again. So I'm going to clean this first off camera. Wipe it off. And then next I'm going to decide which one has the most space and will be the easiest one to mask with. And with this, I think it's going to be the wolf. So I can take this, wipe my stamp cleaner off. This one has not been used either, so I will need to season that. But I want to kind of get this gauge. So first, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cover my T. I'm going to see if this is going to fit in here. And it looks like it will. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to cover under my O, my second O. So this is just a trick. If you do have the letters to make this up, I was tossing around some ideas. Whoops. Now you saw that stick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to season this first, stamp it off. You can kind of hear that when I stamp it off, it sticks. And then I'm going to position this so then that sticky stays there. And then I want to stamp that O. This one's going to be a little bit, I'm going to go over on this side. And actually, I need to stamp this off first. Wipe that off. I want to stamp this off. That was a really good stamp too. So I'm going to stamp ink up the O, and I want to make sure on this, I kind of want to get a little bit more of that tail. Okay. I think that should be good. Wipe off this excess down here. And then I can position this. As long as make sure your sticky note is large enough. I just barely covered that. And it's a little off. I didn't get quite as much ink. I'm not sure I can reposition it, but it gives you the idea. Make sure to press down. There we go. Perfect. I can remove this. That's my masking. I'm going to clean this off camera, a spritz, and then I'm going to clean that stamp up. I'll just set that one aside. And so it's a little bit off, but in hindsight, I can either start over because it's just copy paper, which is what I'm going to do now. Movie magic. So you can either start over and redo that placement. Since I don't have a lot already done on my sheet, I think I'm going to start over and I'll show that second one. We'll proceed with that one. So the great part about recorded video is that I don't have to do the whole process over for you. You saw exactly how I did the beginning part. There are a few things that I was just going to do the finished part, but then I thought, oh, I have another trick to show you. So I did another trick here. I drew a line, but then my spacing was off. I can make that better. It's just a sheet of copy paper. So now I have the love and the travel. It's ready to go. I just need the T here. So what I'm going to do, this is a stamping trick that I've learned in card making. I have sticky notes, so it's sticky at the top. I need that sticky part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first just ink up the T. I need the T. It's okay that the R has a little bit. I need the T at the top of this sticky. So I'm just going to put that there. So this is going to help me with my masking. And then what I need, I'm going to set this aside for just a second. I'm going to use this to start with. Let's clean this off for just a second, just in case I touch my paper. And I'm going to line this up with over top of my stamp. And then I am going to place this where I would like it. So about right there probably. I'm going to push that stamp, that mask down. Then I'm going to ink up this T. Just need the T. If I get a little bit of the R, it's not going to be too bad because I've already masked it. And then I'm going to come in here, stamp my T along that line, making sure the R is on top. And I didn't get any of the L, but I'll show a trick for the previous one on that. So you can get all the tips right in one video. So now I have cleaned that. I want to do the O. But my first two attempts, my O was too low because I didn't have a line. This one, it was too far apart because I was trying to avoid the top. So now I have this little masking here that is sticky. I'm going to put this back on here, grab my woof, position that on my stamp, and then I'm going to take a pair of scissors, and I need the sticky part on the back. That's why I stamped it at the top with the sticky. Then I'm going to just kind of trim around this so I can get a little bit closer to the T. And I can remove this one for right now, and I'm going to place this over top of where my T is. So that is going to protect the T. I can get a little bit closer in here with my design. Placing that mask down. Now when I do this, I'm also stamping on this line, so it's going to be straight. My W, it's hard to see on here, is too high above my T, mask, so I'm just going to slide in a sheet to protect that. So you can just use a couple sheets. This is if you don't have the same letter that, or the right letter that you need. Now I can come in here. Let's make sure my woof. I want to protect my top of my F2. So, and if you have the letters you need in individual stamps, then go for it. I really wanted to use the same text style that this was in, and I had the letters. So it worked with just a little bit of copy paper. Make sure everything is protected. I'm going to push down on that. And then I can do the reveal. So now, third time's a charm. I have my Love to Travel and it's ready to go. So I'm going to put this stamp back on here to protect it, and I can set that aside. Now, on the first one, I do want to make a note of this because I'm not going to use this one, but you can see that part of my stamp, if you miss it with your mask and it's not going to be under any other part of your design, you can just go ahead and take a piece of this heat resistant tape, cover that. Then it's not going to transfer to your object. So that's a little trick if you do happen to get it a little bit of ink there when you're trying to do that masking technique. Now, pencil does not transfer to my blank, so this line is just fine. I'm going to grab my other stamp set, and this is just one in my stash. You can use all kinds of stamps, and I want to use this blossom branch. That I can either come in from the bottom. I want to come in from the top because a cherry blossom does come in kind of from above facing down, and the more blossoms on it, the heavier it can be. So if I position that, and then I have a couple others here. I can either use the same stamp or I could come in and just do another one from down in here. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. So now I'm going to take my larger block, kind of angle this because it is a large stamp. Push that down. This one I have not used yet. I've been saving it. So you can see it's not seasoned. I'm going to just kind of use the oils from my skin. And then what I'm going to do is grab another sheet of copy paper. This will work great because I've already got these sheets. I'm going to stamp on this one first, so I can get a practice stamp as well as season that. Oh, this is going to turn out great. So good. Okay, let's do it like we would. There we go. And you want to make sure that your surface underneath where you're stamping is flat, just so you can get the best, most even press. I'm excited about this one. I love this. I stuck my finger in the ink. Make sure you get it covered everywhere. Position how you want it. And then commit. Push down, and especially since it is a large stamp, I'm just gonna give it even pressure everywhere. Whoa, yay! Okay, now I'm gonna use the smaller ones. Let's see, it was this one. So I'll do the same thing with this one. I'm gonna practice over here on the other sheet. Ink it up, and then I can kind of just bring it in and stamp it. Oh, that looks great. Okay, I have an idea. Okay, so here, stamp this, right there. And then what I'm going to do, I'll clean this one off, so I'll spray off camera. Pull that one off. I have one more of these stamps. When you utilize your card making or stamp sets or whatever you have the stamps for in your stash to create with, you can really make things go a lot farther. So again, I'm going to use this. You can hear that it sticks. I don't want it to stick. So I'm going to season that first. And this one, I kind of want to have it positioned maybe just off. No, we'll just position it here like the blossom is falling off. I could do another one up here if I wanted to. I think I'll leave it just like that. We're gonna, and copy paper, then you can, you know, kind of test your design before you commit. So let's see here. Let's do it this way. Okay, so now I have that design. Want to make sure to let that dry. So I'm going to clean my stamp. Then I'm going to kind of clean up my space. Put those back on. And I just like to clean off my stamps right away or close to it. So I'll spray this large one and then clean it. I will say you can also use a stamp scrubber pad. I find that helps if especially detailed stamps like this, to get into those little crevices and stuff. So I'm just going to carefully remove that and place it back on. Oh. They like to stick very well. And then I am ready to add a little bit of color to this. So the next step is I'm going to use my black. If you have any areas that you would like to add the green to, so I just pulled 3 colors. Cherry blossoms can be a variety of colors, but I'm going to use this pastel pink and I'm going to color this in. So I'm just going to start with some color and you can give it some variation. Anything that you leave white is going to remain white. So I am just going to finish coloring this in and we will come back to the pressing part. Now, once you have your design, I did notice my design is a little farther down. You want to keep in mind on your bag that once you have stuff inside of it, it's going to kind of squat. So since you have your template in pencil, you can actually then want to make sure your print is very dry. You can actually like move it around, so you don't necessarily have to stay inside of where your template is exactly. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down. That way I can secure it to my bag for pressing. I'm just going to give myself a little extra space down here. And then I have my design is ready to go. Decide which side you would like it on. What I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to put the towel. So I have a towel here. I'm going to place this towel inside and I'm going to smooth it out as flat as possible. And then I'm actually going to press this for 2 reasons. One, it's going to get any moisture out of the zipper bag that could have gotten in there from the time I unpackaged it. But another is it's going to help me to see that this bag, this towel inside of the bag is flat and there are no uneven surfaces inside that are going to affect it. So I'm going to move that over to my press, give it a quick press. This does, not only does it help the actual blank, but it's also going to allow me to test the pressure on my press to make sure that it's going to fit. So I'm just going to give that a quick press, keeping the zipper out of the press. Just a few seconds, and then what you can see here is I do have some fuzz. I'm going to grab a lint roller. I want to lint roll that off first, but I want to get rid of any of the fuzz, but now I have this even surface. So now I'm just going to take a lint roller, get it going in the correct direction. It always doesn't like me rolling in one direction. I'm going to lint roll that off. Make sure that, because any of the fibers that you might have seen there would affect, and the ink will bind to those fibers, and it can either leave color spots or it will leave blue spots. So now this is the side that I have pressed it on. That's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to place my design down so that I can tape this in place. And I'm going to position it onto the sheet of paper. Then I'm going to secure it with heat tape. And I want to make sure that it is well secured so that it's not going to shift. So taking just a little bit of extra time here can really save your blank. Since I have my towel there, it's really not going to be able to be secured at the top. What I can do with these extras down here is just fold the ends over so it doesn't stick. And I'm just folding it back onto itself. So now I have my blank. I'm going to grab my protective paper. I want to make sure that my protective paper covers my entire blank and the entire surface of my heat press so I don't get any ink anywhere. So I'm going to roll out a sheet. This is the loudest part. And I'm going to grab 2 sheets. I'm going to take 1 sheet and I'm going to place it on my bottom platen of my press. Then I'm going to position my blank on top of it with the print on the top so that the print is going to hit the heat press, the hot part of the heat press. I want to position it so my zipper is outside of the press. And I'm going to put my next sheet of protective paper on. So I have a sandwich. I have a sheet of protective paper, my blank, my print, and then my protective paper on top. I'm going to press this at 400 degrees for 45 seconds. Then we will come back. I'm going to slowly lift my press and just kind of let it settle for just a second and then slowly release that. Now it's going to be extremely hot. I have grabbed my Artesprix heat protective pad so that it will protect my workspace. I'm going to carefully lift this over here and just set it down. I want to just kind of let it settle for just a second so that it's really, really hot, especially if you happen to get that zipper inside of the press. So on here, if it'll show up on camera, I can see that ink did transfer to this protective sheet. You do not want to reuse this, or that ink could transfer to your next blank or to the top of your heat press platen if you put it on upside down. I'm going to throw this away. And then let's take this bottom one out here and I do the same thing. And we will have the reveal. So let's take out, this is the best part of the whole process. Let's take this out. Now this is a spare towel. Sometimes you could possibly get ink transfer into the inside of this. That's okay for me because it's just it's a towel I use for heat pressing. And then we'll go ahead and we can remove this. And we have, let's remove this heat tape. And here is our finished bag. Now I can tell you here, see, you can see here with the very edge of that seam, it kind of gets a little bit blurry on the very edge, but the color really showed up. One thing I would recommend, so I used this same marker. This is what I started with up here. And then this is the brighter colors that it came out with as the ink started flowing. So you may want to start your pens a little bit as you go along. I do notice, which I probably just needed to tape it a little bit more. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera. This ghosted just a little bit. But those are things that you can have in your pressing, and just the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And I love these projects. So this is the Artesprix zipper bag with the Artesprix sublimation markers and the Artesprix ink pad. Now, don't throw away those extra bits that you stamped off. If they are good stamps, you can still use those images and use it for another sublimation blank. So I grabbed one of the Artesprix sublimation luggage tags, and I'm coloring in the designs that turned out great. And then I'm going to press those, and I have a luggage tag that is going to match my bag. Here's a couple still photos. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications of future content. Check out the Artesprix blog in the links below for additional inspiration on the zipper bags and also on the rest of the sublimation products that Artesprix offers. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.